Bury and their expulsion from the EFL. Owen Coyle is with me. Ian Dennis and Michael Brown are still at Sinsel Bank, where Everton put out Lincoln. This is personal for you as well, Michael, isn't it? Because your son, I'm assuming I say now, was at the Bury Academy.
Well, he was until I told him this morning the bad news. Obviously, I explained to him what might be happening, and you're just watching all of the kids' faces, how you tell them that the football club's not there, and all the WhatsApp groups today for all the teams, all the coaches, all the staff, that it's just going, and there's pictures of the kids being upset, and you start to realise, where do we go now, what do we do? And a lot of these parents and children have put so much into it to try and make their career as a young footballer. So there's a lot of people being affected by this, and it is just a sad state of affairs how the club has been left to get so bad. And we knew years ago when I was at Port Vale in the same league, when they signing so many people and the amounts they're spending, and you hear about the finances that they're doing, and this is where it gets to, and it's just been a complete mess. But yeah, very, very sad for everybody concerned.
Just that last part, before I go on to the personal side of it again. When you were at Port Vale and you say, and they're signing all of these players, and you're hearing what they might be spending, and this wasn't even under Steve Dale, this was under the previous regime to that. When you're hearing that, if you're hearing that, for you, should that start setting off alarm bells with the football authorities?
Chappers, it was well aware. Everybody in football was talking about the signings, what Bury was making and what they were spending on wages. There was a particular player that we went in for. We were blown out the water.
Do you know what Bury fans were talking about? I spoke to a Bury fan this afternoon who said the moment we signed Leon Clark, they took Leon Clark from Wolves, and he had Championship and Big League One sides going for him, and they got Leon Clark, and he said, as a Bury fan, then they had the alarm bells ringing.
Well, the alarm bells were ringing. I heard I had somebody who worked at the football club, and the amount he told me that they were losing each month, it wasn't sustainable, and it will come to an end. And obviously 2 years later, that's what happens. But how it's not had the control, the league and the EFL was still signing off these contracts and allowing them all to go through, as well as the lending everywhere, here, there and everywhere. And it was obvious that was going to be a huge problem. But why it wasn't managed, all the people in the league who knew that Bury officially were going outside of the realms, paying too much to get promotion, and they knew it was happening, but yet as a collective group, they still didn't do anything about it.
Does that then, in your situation, and Port Vale have had their own problems as well over the years, let's not forget, and there are plenty of other clubs, does that increase pressure on other clubs to then gamble more?
Well, it does. You can see that. And like when I was we're going for a relegation at Port Vale, and we're going for a particular player, you lose out because there was bigger finances and gambling to do so. So there is a knock-on effect at other clubs. But again, we had our own problems at Port Vale. It was well documented. The owner did it his way, and it was very difficult times. Now he's moved on, and he almost bought Bury. And it's just difficult times down the bottom end of these leagues, and the club's trying to keep up, trying to get these rewards, and they're gambling. That's what these owners are doing.
Ian, it sounded like you were going to come in then.
No, I find it very, very mystifying, because when you think that there is a framework in place for League One and League Two, League One clubs can spend a maximum of 60% of their turnover of wages, and the limit in League Two is 55%. So to hear what Bury have done, it makes you wonder, how did they do it when that framework is in place?
But then, as we heard earlier and discussed earlier, there are certain, there are certain things that feel like a line in the sand, and clubs aren't being constantly monitored. And the other thing, Michael, that also comes to light as you go around message boards of lower league clubs and their fans, is how sometimes the same people crop up in different places who aren't the owners, and therefore that fit them, whatever the correct phrase is for the owners, that's one thing. But it's amazing how many other characters can be in the background within lower league football.
Well, I think that's just what it is, and it's predators, isn't it, where people are weak and they go and try and take everything possible out of it. But this is I was at Portsmouth, and we had similar problems then that I'd seen through what it was like and how difficult times were, and you start to realise the amount of debt that they're leaning on the local community. And it's all
Michael,
the community.
I think as well, when clubs are desperate for cash, then they're prepared to overlook if somebody is, don't want to say unscrupulous, but some people that this fit and proper, whatever you want to call it, wouldn't be allowed, but they allow them into the club because they think they've got money and they're going to help them because they're in need of cash.
But what has to happen, I think, and hopefully it will happen now, is that essentially now the Football League can't step in, because the way that the clubs have voted, they want to the Football League run the league, but there needs to be a governing body to actually marshal it and to then intervene, because at the minute I don't think the Football League has that under their jurisdiction. But also regarding this test, you can be a credible person to pass the test, but once you then come in, are you capable? Because I can think of one club from last season who, it wasn't anything to do with financial problems, could easily have been ruined by the actions of one man and the decisions that he was making, and he killed the spirit of the club. And thankfully that club then moved him on, and everybody is now sort of like having to recover from the decisions that he made. And that was he had he been in there, he might have passed the credible test. As it turns out, he wasn't the majority shareholder, but he pulled the wool over the eyes of the majority shareholder. Was he capable and fit to run a football club? You bet he wasn't.
Sorry, chaps, I think the most important thing moving forward through the EFL, whatever you want to call it, is that the clubs show they have the funding to run for that season. So at the outset of the season, you know where your revenues come in, but you also have, you know, if somebody's going to put money in but they're putting it up front, I know we've mentioned this before, I just think it's so important for moving forward, and there's transparency and everybody knows exactly what's going on at the club.
But Owen, it's where they're getting that from. Where are they lending up against it to get the money, so they can show that the funds are available, but what are they putting in place in the background? But all the different debt.
I think that's actually happened now with the Football League and Football Ventures who've taken over Bolton Wanderers, is that I'm pretty sure that the Football League have asked them for 2 years worth in terms of a business plan. Where's the money to fund Bolton over the next 2 years?
The administrator, as Owen just said to me off air, has been incredibly critical of Ken Anderson's behaviour during the takeover, and also Lawrence Bassini, who was trying to take over the club at times over the last 6 months. The administrator, who is that Paul Appleton? Yeah, and he said at times some of the hurdles appeared to be insurmountable, and the frustration felt has been immense. He described Bassini's interventions at times as unhelpful, and this is what he said about Ken Anderson, because he actually praises the Eddie Davis Trust here and said they did everything.
They were very helpful,
testament to their unflinching determination. He says that we were able to complete the deal because of some of the circumstances and demands they faced were wholly unreasonable. They were not prepared to allow Eddie's beloved Bolton to suffer any longer at the hands of Ken Anderson. Sadly, Mr. Anderson used his position as a secure creditor to hamper and frustrate any deal that did not benefit him or suit his purposes. Thankfully, with the assistance of the Trust and others, we were able to overcome this obstacle. Just back to Berry, is your son okay, Michael?
Yeah, he's fine. I mean, obviously he knew what was going on, and he actually just said to me at breakfast this morning, so where do I go now? What do I do? Where do I play my football? And that's when it's sad, you know, because they put so much into it. They're looking forward to a season, all their friends, they've got such a good group. Actually, it's a really good academy at Bury with all the people, some good coaches, some great young players, and you know, who's going to take that? And I was speaking to Deno earlier, you know, is there a local club nearby, like a Salford City, who could actually come and take that whole academy who's setting up as a new club? And it's just so many good young kids and coaches are finding this problem.
Michael Brown alongside Ian Dennis, Owen Coyle here as well. Let's hear from Phil Neville, who grew up supporting Bury.
I think it's disgraceful. I really do, that Bury, 125 years old, no longer has a football club. I dread to think how my mum is feeling in this moment in time. Those Bury supporters that you saw yesterday, cleaning the seats, standing outside Gig Lane. You'd say that the heart of the town has been ripped apart, and now it's up to the Bury people, myself included, to try and put some heart back into a town that relied heavily on the football club. I suppose for me, it's the emotion for me is that my granddad worked on the car park for 40 years. My nana helped in prepare the buffets for the directors at half time. My mum's give her heart and soul to that football club. My dad My dad ultimately, it nearly killed him at one point. So the emotional tie for me and my family is that it's ripped the heart out of our town, our club, and really the heart out of my mum and the families.
Phil Neville talking a little earlier.